Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. Glad you could join me as we venture out into the field or the woods or maybe the water this time of year and learn and have some fun at the same time with our favorite companions, the ones with four legs. Yeah, great show in store for you. Speaking of four-legged companions, we're going to learn a lot about training and particularly diving deep into the right way to use our electronic training collars. My good friend Pete Fischer from Dogtra will be joining me for the gist of the podcast. We'll be covering everything, probably answering a lot of questions that you might have about, well, maybe some of the other ways to use your collar or the right way to introduce it to that new pup, for example. Or, hey, maybe starting all over again with a more mature dog. That's not all. In our Fix It segment, I'll give you a field-ready tip you can practice at the range sometimes for shooting skills. And then I asked you to tell me about your pet peeves in the field, and we'll share some of those, maybe prompt a few thoughts, and at least get them off our chest. How's that? It's all coming up right here on the Upland Nation podcast. You know, it's only made possible thanks to these great sponsors: Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, RuffLand Kennels, and Pointer Shotguns and HiViz Sights. Well, a belated happy birthday to Flick. We celebrated on his morning, his special morning. He doesn't sleep in unless I'm away, and then he sleeps as late as possible. But we got up and had an extra coffee, and then later that day went down to one of my favorite craft breweries and set him in the outdoor section and toasted with a brand new Polish lager I've never had before. These are all crafted right there. I can't even pronounce the name, but hey, it was pretty good. Kind of a twist on the Czech lagers that everybody probably knows. And also got a taste, and that's all I could handle, a little taste of a pale ale they make at Spider City Brewing that has Carolina Reaper hot peppers in it. Yow. I don't know how anybody could handle a whole pint of that. But anyway, Flick didn't get a taste of either one of those, even at 8. In dog years, that's too old to be starting a new beer habit. He's a good boy, 8 years old. Good dog. You know, these are the things that keep me up at night. The pet peeves of one sort or another. It just bugs me sometimes how inconsiderate other people are. And I know we shouldn't dwell on this stuff, but we need to get it off our chest every once in a while. So I invited you all to do that. Whether it was a hunting partner, gear, your dog, the surroundings, whatever it is, go ahead. Open it up. Let's share some of these. And here's something. Think about it as you're listening to these from your fellow hunters. Boy, maybe I'm guilty of some of that. Let's go down the list. Mike Talbot says bird guts and dog poop at the public access parking area. Absolutely. And we know why. First off, it's disgusting. Second off, the next dog might get into that stuff. And third, the poor schmo who is giving that public access is going to look at that and say, all hunters are slobs. I'm not going into the program next season. Finding other people's shells is Sabrina Serna's gripe, and I understand that. I had a guy many years ago, I asked him why he was shooting an auto loader, and back then you could take the plug out for chuckers. And so he'd use all 5 shots at every covey and just leave him. And I said, once they hit the ground, they're just trash. do you litter everywhere? And he thought about it for a moment, and until then, I don't think he had ever thought about it. More importantly, I said, so everybody knows where all the big cuffies are because your evidence is right there on the ground. Anyway, breasted out birds left in the parking areas by Amundsen Norwegian Flash Joel. That's a mouthful. It sounds like a good kennel name, though. Lynn Glock says a pickup parked in my spot. How dare they? Yeah, I understand. John Kozlowski, we're all guilty of this, aren't we? And it's not just a whistle. It could be yelling. It could be anything else. People who cannot control their whistle. You don't need to blow it every 30 seconds. True. Spent shells, James Folsom. Yeah, we can ascribe to the leave no trace ethic as bird hunters, just like the backpackers. More litter from Betty Blackman. David Kuritsky, absolutely same thing. Those who leave hulls. So the same for Joel Witt. And hey, finally, somebody griping about fellow hunters. People who treat the hunt as a race. Thanks, Joel, for bringing that to the fore. Absolutely true. Brandon Wheeler, this does not get enough attention. Thank you. Muzzle awareness. Hey, look it up. Maybe you've done it. We've all done it. Let's try not to do it again. Keep the noise down as much as possible, please, says Brian Hansen. Four-wheelers driving into spots where they shouldn't. Yes, absolutely. Mike and Erica Carr. Maybe the National Guard or Marines have time. Well, they might pretty soon. Grant Goblish says, ATVs, UTVs, and road hunters. Yes, absolutely. It is one of my gripes as well. Haven't had it happen for a while, but you do all the work and get up to that really high spot, and then you hear it. Or you come around that point and there's the tracks. Yes. Cork green plastic bags and potato chip bags that blow into brush and stick there. Yeah. How about those Mylar balloons? Yeah. You ever found one of those? Somebody I'm acquainted with online makes it their mission to pick up every one of those, and more power to you. I've forgotten who you are, but keep up the good work. Jeff Amberson, this one, everybody can relate to this. Other people trying to handle my dog, tell the dog what to do. Let's remember, my dog's nose is better than your eyes. And then hunters that don't share the shots. Let everyone have their turn. Why do we have to talk about that? It shouldn't, okay, maybe not. Common sense is not that common. Thanks for the reminders, Jeff. Cheryl Tepp says, CRP that has been treated poorly, lack of respect for the land, the game, and the landowners. Amen. All good stuff. Thank you so much. I hope you all feel better. I sure do, getting it off my chest. I could go on and on, but maybe I should ask the opposite question. I'll make a note about that, and we'll talk about the things you love about the places, the people, and dog work, and everything else along those lines. So I'll do that in a future social media post. Thank you all. That part of the show brought to you by sageandbreaker.com. Gun cleaning and care. Maybe you missed out on the Father's Day sale. That's okay, because there will be another one, and you will find out about it because you will sign up for their email list. In addition to finding out when the sales are, you'll learn more about the new products, the products that were sold out and back in stock. And then every once in a while, Fred and his team will issue a kind of an advisory email, tips and advice on everything from reloading to your dogs. And lots of inspiration. Fred is full of this stuff. He could be a philosopher as well as a great hunter and heck of an inventor. Learn more about all of that stuff and more at sageandbreaker.com. And then see what you've been seeing. I went to the range last weekend with my 28. By the way, thank you, Pointer. It's sure shooting well. HiVizSights.com. Put a HiViz sight on my shotgun. I don't shoot the wacky sporting clays targets, the long distance shots are the ones you'll never see in the field, but I'm shooting 75% on targets that are bird-like and with a 28 gauge. And I give a lot of the credit to that HiViz sight. These light pipes just force your head to see the muzzle when you're looking at the moving target. It works for me. I put together a video on that, and in fact, from that range. Thank you, Redmond Rod and Gun Club. Put that together to demonstrate it graphically. There's some good illustrations in there that will show you how that works from a practical standpoint. Take a look at the video. Learn more about HiVizSights.com. I finally lit on an idea that I think would be of real value this time of year in particular, because a goodly 20-25% of you have a puppy in the house right now, and a lot of us, well, most of us have an electronic training collar. If you don't, then you'll want one after this. I've asked my friend, who's a consultant for Dogtra, the collar company, and also a pro dog trainer, Pete Fischer, to join me. Pete is going to take us to school on electronic training collars. Pete, welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast.
Thank you, Scott, for having me.
We meant to do this at Pheasant Fest, but it got so busy, and then you were shorthanded in your booth for a while. I'm glad we could finally connect. Hey, but before we go on with that, did you feel the energy at Pheasant Fest this year?
Not like it was other years. I know the numbers were down, Scott, and especially Sunday was very slow for us. So, it was not the same, but hopefully bringing it back to Minneapolis, I believe next year will bring back the crowds and the energy.
Yeah, I understand why they move it around, and there's some sound reasons for that, but there's something in that vortex of Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's Pheasant Forever's hometown, if you will.
Yep.
And that helps a lot. But also, I think there are just more bird hunters in that area than there were. Where were we? Kansas City? I forgot.
Kansas City, yeah. But the previous year, Scott, they broke a record in Sioux Falls.
Yeah. Go figure.
An all-time record.
Yeah. Smaller market, but proportionally maybe the biggest number of bird hunters per capita.
Correct.
If you think about it. So anyway, it's always a good time. I don't care where it is, anybody out there, if you're within 5 hours of driving distance, go to the next Pheasant Fest. I can guarantee you'll have a good time. And if you don't, seek me out and I'll give you a refund.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how many people, traveled from up in my area of central Minnesota or even the Twin Cities down to Sioux Falls, which is, pretty good hike. I was very surprised the previous one in Sioux Falls, how many people traveled quite a distance to attend it.
Yeah, and especially in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about that. That's insider talk for another time. But Pete has graciously agreed to kind of literally provide a tutorial for us. So no matter where you are in your electronic training collar career, wherever your dog is in his or her skills development, we're going to start at the beginning and we're going to walk through this. Yeah, we'll make a few detours here and there because the first thing I'm going to do is a detour. Pete, how's your hunting season been the last couple?
It's been okay. Our pheasants I'm not in a great pheasant range, and I'm too far north for any quail.
Yeah.
So really, it's just pheasants. And then, unfortunately, Scott, most of our waterfowl seem to have moved west. And so, again, we're suffering from potholes, sloughs being drained still in this day. And so we just don't see the duck numbers. Pheasants are okay, but it's not great numbers that I experienced years back.
That's interesting. So when you said the waterfowl have moved west, I'm thinking, what'd they do? Find a detour sign or something? No, you're saying the habitat has changed.
Yeah, the migration pattern has changed, I think, because of the environment. We won't get into it here, but I believe some of these very large flooded cornfields where it's pay to hunt ducks down in some of the southern states, you've probably read about it, seen some of it, has influenced it as well. And it's all legal to do, but it really, Scott, I'll give you an example. I never duck hunted once this year.
Wow.
Nope. Otherwise, there's just no birds around, period. So I spend my time chasing my dogs around and looking for pheasants. That's primarily what I do now.
And there was a very touching story. I think it was on your Instagram. I'm not positive now, but you had a great picture of I'll call him a dark blonde, yellowish lab with some ribbons. And at the time, you would refer to it as a green dog that would find birds, but not always steady. Tell me about that dog and his progression. I mean, how did you get to the point where he finally was steady enough for your taste?
Oh, well, I think you're talking about I lost my old German Shorthair Pointer Trip to old age a couple of years ago now, and I bought a 6-month-old dog from an individual, and Zeke is this dog's name. I think that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
and he was started, but he needed to be trained like all dogs. And so I started obedience training him, remote training collar condition him. He was broke to the gun and he knew what birds were, but every time he'd bump a bird and I'd let him chase and recall it and wouldn't shoot it, I'd bring him back and I'd have a little discussion with him. And I'd say, I've got 2 Labrador retrievers that will flush birds for me. I wanted one dog that would point, and you're that dog. Just so you know.
Okay, so I got to interrupt. I'm sorry. Okay, hey everybody. Even a pro trainer like Pete Fischer tries to reason with his dog.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on. So you had a discussion.
So over the course of time, just letting them bust birds and calling them back and keep working on the standing stay position. I don't use the whoa command because I believe it sounds too much like no. And so I just use my standing stay command is wait. And that means wait until I get there and don't bust that bird.
Yeah.
And so over the course of time, he matured and with training and experience, he started pointing and holding his birds for me. So last season was a good season for him. And, you're going to have that with dogs. I mean, there's a reason I've got a litter of Labrador Retriever puppies on the ground right now, and I haven't raised an individual litter here in many, many years. Mostly what I did is I owned titled stud dogs, and people came to me and used my dogs for breeding once they had all the health clearances done. But I was just talking to one of the people that have a deposit on one of the puppies in the litter. And he was concerned that he had the 3rd pick in the litter. And I said, really, your first thing is you went out and you found the best possible breeding you could find with proven parents, titled parents, and then had all of the hereditary health clearances done. And we do all that. Most all of it is done with DNA profiling nowadays, Scott.
Yeah.
And I said, really, the next part of it is environment. And that's how you bring the dog up, how you expose it, how you to different environments, and how you train it. Otherwise, if you don't train it and really do a decent job at it, you've wasted your money. So I think that's one of the main things that everybody has to realize. And even though Zeke was out of very good background, hunting background, and some field trial stock and hunt test stock, he had the genetics for it. he just hadn't been groomed yet to the point where he knew his job. And so we got there, and this season will even be a bigger and better season for him.
Oh, yeah. And you're talking about the hardest challenges for a pointing breed of any sort, and that is pheasants, who are more inclined to wander away from a pointing dog.
Yes.
That's, I every time I go to South Dakota, I swear I'm going to own a flushing dog from now on, because they drive the pointers nuts so often. But
especially late season birds, I see that, where they just want to outrun you.
Yep.
And then the pointer goes on point, and then the bird runs, and then the pointer goes on point, and then pretty soon out of the end of the field goes the bird. And if the dog's too far out, he breaks point, and there goes the dog as well. So it's all about control with any dog that you have, pointer or retriever.
Absolutely, and that's a good segue. Speaking of control, and in the right way, and you've got your own way of describing all of these things, I'm sure. But let's go to school. We got a young dog. We brought it home from the breeder. It's all the things you just described, and now it's up to us to carry on. The nature is there. We need to nurture this dog correctly. When it comes to an electronic training collar, hopefully a Dogtra collar, right, everybody? Right. What are the first things we should do with a collar and a young dog?
Well, the first thing is the dog needs to be obedience trained using conventional methods, so the dog understands, knows commands. And then I said this so many times I've lost track in my life, Scott, is that the remote training collar is used to reinforce commands the dog already knows. That's the correct way to do it. Many people just go and buy the training collar because they got control issues, and they slap it on the dog and start pushing buttons. And that's the wrong way to do it, because the dog doesn't know the sensation, and it works on a form of what we refer to as static electricity.
Yeah.
And so it's not like the same type of electrical stimulation that you would get by grabbing a livestock fence. It's totally different than that, and we've all done that. Many of us won't admit to it, but that is a much harsher form of electrical charge. And really, the remote training collar works on a form of static electricity, which is basically most people have experienced walking across a dry rug and grounding yourself when you grab a doorknob. That's a static charge and the only other piece of equipment the average person could really understand the sensation of it from is if you've ever gone to a chiropractor or a physical therapist, and they have something called a TENS unit that they attach to.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that sensation, which is a form of electric static charge that goes into your nerve endings and into your muscles is the way these units work. And so the dog, unless you've trained the dog and the dog knows the commands, and you start with the e-collar and the dog is on a rope or a leash, so you can control them and show them what you want. That dog has no idea what that sensation means that I just described.
Yeah.
So really, before you ever start in with any remote training collar, the first thing to do is to obedience train the dog. And as I talk to people or do demonstrations, I'll say to them, the most important piece of equipment you need is a rope or a leash. And then a lot of times people will say, well, wait a minute, Pete, I understand that, but I want to get it so I have control of this dog without the rope or leash on it. And what I tell them is that rope or leash, Scott, as I'm using the remote training collar and teaching the dog how to get out of the uncomfortable sensation of the remote training collar, to guide it to the position I want, either come to me, go stationary, or go away from me, I need to have it on a rope or leash so I can guide it, because the dog just does not understand what that sensation means. So right off the bat, so we have to have the rope or leash on them to guide them like a fish on a line, so to speak, and bring the dog to us or put it in a stationary position. That's what we start with. And so there's so much information out there on the remote training collar nowadays, and I'm going to say most of it is very good. But the most important part is to start out with the obedience training before you ever slap that piece of equipment on your dog.
Okay, so we're almost ready to slap that piece of equipment on a dog. By the way, you're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. That's, pardon me, Pete Fischer from Dogtra Training Collars, and a pro trainer at that. Pete, the term collar conditioning, I have a feeling, has been used and abused way too much. Younger dog, the unit is a little heavier than their regular collar. It's kind of weirdly balanced, and it's got these two things sticking in their neck a little bit. What is collar and conditioning, and how do we do it the right way?
Well, the collar conditioning starts with once the dog is obedience trained and on the leash. And what most of us start with is the recall command. And we start teaching the dog to turn off the stimulation by complying with the command. And the first one almost everybody starts with is recall, to get the dog to come to you.
Yeah.
Because, I heard this one day when I was visiting with a guy that and was in the dog training business even longer than I was, Tom Dawkin. And Tom is a friend, and we've known each other many years. And as he was doing his dog demo, he said, normally a dog that doesn't come when it's called is eventually a dog that's in trouble. Yeah. And that's a good way to look at it. So the recall command is, I think, our most important command. And then off of that, we teach them to go stationary, which for a retriever is sit, or for a pointing dog, the standing stay position. And then also we teach them to go away from us into a boat, into a kennel. So it's a 3-step process. But when I start that dog with the remote training collar, I've got it on a long piece of rope, and I start calling the dog with the recall command I use here, and I will use light stimulation just to reinforce, just to kind of get that dog's attention. And as soon as that dog commits to the command, in other words, starts coming to me, I stop any electrical stimulation to the dog. And then when the dog gets to me, I follow it up with positive reinforcement. The conditioning process, the reason we call it that is, again, I heard Dawkins say this also, just because a dog sits once doesn't mean it knows sit. Didn't think about that.
Hey, I'm thinking about my dog.
Yeah, when the dog consistently comes to you or sits on command in a number of different environments, Scott, that's also very important. Not just doing it in your garage, but also we start introducing distractions. So out in the backyard where there's birds flying around, robins, sparrows, you name it. And but we still keep the dog on in the early stages. We keep the dog on the rope or leash, because when I'm 100% sure he understands the command and the out of the stimulation, that's when I'll drop the rope or leash, let him drag it. Then I can always go over and pick it up and bring it, show the dog what I need by bringing him back to me.
Yeah.
But we give up pieces of our control, as we get further into the training. And eventually our goal is to have the dog out and about with the training collar on, and we call him and he responds to it. If he doesn't, then we use it to reinforce the recall command or the sit command. Okay. So that's how you start it. And it's a little more complicated than what I can describe over a podcast, but that's the best way I can describe it. Is we start with the conditioning has got to be on the rope or the leash. Yeah. That's our safety net.
You touched on something that I think this is kind of the nexus of all of that. And it is that moment where you've got the dog on a long line, and as you say, you're starting with recall. When are you pressing the button, and when are you giving the tug, and when are you saying a command? How do those all mesh together?
Well, another great question. And what I tell people is that should all come together, in my opinion, at about the same time. Mm-hmm. So the dog hears the command when I'm in the conditioning phase. Yeah. The dog hears again, let's go back and use recall. So when I call the dog to hear, I apply light stimulation. And if you were standing there, or somebody that didn't understand what I was doing, they might say, well, wait a minute, Pete, you never even gave the dog an opportunity to come before you applied that light stimulation. What most of us do in the retriever training world is we don't give the dog that option to comply with the command. We give the command and use light stimulation, and the dog, as soon as he feels it and commits to the command, in other words, let's say again, recall starts coming to me, that uncomfortable feeling stops. Now I'm not big into using a real heavy amount of stimulation.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that gets me what I want out of the dog. It just puts unwanted pressure on the dog. And I just need to see the dog's head move a little bit. I need to see his eyes blink. I need to see him neck muscles twitch. And that's what in my book, that's how I want the dog to react. But as soon as the dog commits to the command, that uncomfortable feeling stops. And then the positive reinforcement starts. Okay. And that happens every time. We just keep doing that over and over. And eventually we get to the point where I reuse the recall command of here, and he spins on a dime and the dog comes right to me. And then I positive reinforcement with no stimulation. Now we got him. Now we got the dog collar conditioned for the recall command.
You know, you just hit, and we've all seen it probably in somebody else's well-trained dog, but there's no hesitation. They're not thinking about whether they're going to obey or not. They are obeying as you notice them. And you touched on something else, and that is, you know, a lot of us are kind of afraid to dial up the stimulation. The stimulation is not, well, at this point at least, am I safe to say, stimulation is not a punishment. We're not trying to get that dog away from a rattlesnake. We're trying to get that dog's attention. Is that more close to the idea of the stimulation?
It's correct. It's going to be very similar if you had the dog on a pinch collar or what a lot of the old timers called a choke chain.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same. It's going to be that quick jerk to get the dog's attention, and that sensation of the pinch collar stops because the dog turns and starts coming to you or goes to the sit position if we're giving that command. But you're correct. That's
great.
That's how most of us use it. Now, again, I think I've probably used this line in the past. It's, there's only one if you put 3 dog trainers in a room, there's only one thing that 2 of them can agree on, and that's the third one is wrong. So there's a lot of ways to skin that cat, so to speak. I just tell people what I've used over the years, and I'd like to think I had a fairly successful dog training operation for 30 years, and still dabble in it. Work for a Dogtra company as a contractor for the remote training collars, and have a number of master hunter titled dogs. So that all just didn't happen by luck. I've learned a lot over the years, and there's right ways and wrong ways to use a remote training collar. And anytime I get an opportunity to talk to people or be on a podcast, I like to give them the methods I've used. And my methods have typically been with low to medium stimulation and not using the real high stimulation.
Okay, well, we've introduced the collar and the concept of why we will use it and how we will use it. We'll have much more. We'll take our more mature dogs and probe deeply, pardon the pun, into some of the more subtle aspects of a more mature dog using an e-collar with Pete Fischer of Dogtra. And we'll also cover a shooting tip from the Sporting Clays course that will apply to your field shooting. That's coming up on the Fix It segment. More with Pete, more on shooting, coming up after this short break. Pete, hang right tight in there. Go get a drink of water, and we'll come right back to you.
Will do.
I mentioned going to the range already once, shooting my pointer shotguns with for me, pretty good success. I always tell everybody I got way more excuses for shooting bad than some people. One of the things I'm enjoying is how nice these side-by-sides from Pointer are responding. They're balanced well. They're beautiful. I know because you comment when you look at the videos, the case-colored versions are incredible, but there's a little of everything. If you're one of those off-road kind of guys, there's a green Cerakote. There's a little bit of everything when it comes to finishes, and not just on the side-by-sides, on all the Pointer shotguns. I want to invite you to go to pointershotguns.com. In the upper left-hand corner, there's a little tab for the new hard copy version of their 2025 catalog. Go up there, click on it, scroll down. You can order a free copy. You get all the specs, all the colors, and some beautiful pictures by my friend Andy McCormick over there. It's well worth waiting for. It's the kind of thing you will leave on your coffee table. You'll page through it. Hard copies are so much more fun. It's like reading a magazine that's all about shotguns. Ordered at the website. Go to pointershotguns.com. And speaking of websites, you know, if you're like me, you're always looking for the newest thing or the coolest, newest thing. Well, RuffLand Kennels understands your lifestyle to the point where they've got all sorts of great colors for their dog crates. Yeah, so if you're looking for one that expresses your philosophy, whether it's blaze orange or lilac, they run through a rainbow of colors on their dog crates over the course of a few years. So learn more about what they're doing at RuffLandKennels.com. That's RUFF, Land Kennels. And that's not all, of course. In addition to an affordable, safe, well-designed dog kennels, they've got everything for carrying and serving water and food to your dog. They've also got some gear storage options for you that I use the heck out of, not just during hunting season either. I used their big water storage device at a rodeo a couple weekends ago. Came in real handy. And if you've ever been to one, you know why. Anyway, learn more about the entire, what they call the ultimate travel system at RuffLandKennels.com. Welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Hopefully, on the other end of the line, pro trainer, Dogtra consultant, and e-collar expert Pete Fischer. Pete, are you still with me?
I'm here.
That reminded me.
Listening to your blurb on RuffLand Kennels.
Yeah.
I just got another one from Doug.
What color?
I stick with the plain old white ones.
Yeah.
I've had, and being in the dog business for as many years as I have been, I have almost every dog crate, travel kennel known to man or woman. But I've settled on this brand for a couple different reasons. One, I know Doug quite well, and that always helps, the owner. But also, so many of these travel crates that they make, they're really good quality, and you're going to pay for it. But some of them are so god-awful heavy, Scott, to get them in and out of the vehicle. And I keep them in the back of my truck, and my truck has got a topper on it. But I also have one that fits behind the seat of my pickup. So if it's cold out and I've got a dog with me, the dog loads right in there, and I had a buddy. I helped him get a crate. He's actually getting a puppy out of this litter I talked about earlier. I put him in touch with Doug, and they got him a crate. And my buddy's name is John Molitor, and John was saying, well, I want this size and this size. And I said, well, John, these aren't going to be great big dogs. You're getting a female. She's probably going to be about 55 pounds. So it's not like you need a great big crate. A lot of the people think that you need a huge crate. When in fact, when you're traveling, if you're in an accident, the smaller the crate, the better off the dog is, because it's not going to get thrown all around inside that crate. So he went ahead and we got him one of the intermediate sizes, because John has a pickup just like mine, and it will fit right behind the front seats. And you can put it in the back of the truck, or you could put it in the back seat when it's cold. So they make a great unit, and they're easy to move around.
Well, you just hit on two things. And Doug, I'm going to have to charge you extra for your next commercial after this. They also make a version that is configured, shaped to fit behind your SUV seats.
Yes.
They think of everything. They're dog people. I've hunted with Doug. He's got ugly dogs like me. He knows of what we speak. Absolutely.
Well, as I did that little blurb for RuffLand Kennels, I was kind of thinking the same thing as you. Gosh, my next couple of crates should be free of charge. So great minds think alike.
And I don't think it'll be this season, but Doug, I will see you somewhere other than Pheasant Fest or a Cabela store real soon.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Let's get back to our tutorial on e-collars. I'm just such a believer in what you talked about in terms of introducing that collar. But let's go to the next step. We got a dog that understands a few commands beyond obedience. Let's go to the next stage. We're working in the field on a skill of one sort or another. And here's the one that always puzzles me. Steadiness for a pointing dog. How or should we use an e-collar in that case?
Well, when we're using it for steadying, we would have introduced it in that conditioning process back in the yard before we ever use it out in the field.
Of course, yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, is that I teach my dogs the retrievers turn off light stimulation by complying with what we call the sit command, or one hard whistle blast. That's what we do with them.
Mm-hmm.
With my pointers, I've traditionally used the wait command, which is standing stay. And so we'd want to condition that dog in the yard to the standing stay position. And if he moves on the bird out in the field, you could bring him back and, steady him with the training collar under light stimulation. I've actually used the pager vibration for that, because I don't like to, if the dog starts catwalking or creeping in on a bird, I will steady him up with the wait command, just with the pager vibration. So that way I'm not applying any stimulation, and by chance it's too high or he reacts wrong. And pretty soon you got a dog that associates the stimulation with pointing the bird.
Yeah.
And now pretty soon you get what we call blinking a bird, that he felt the stimulation and associated it with the bird. And so the next time he encounters a bird, he shies away from it. He blinks it because, the last time around it wasn't very pleasant. So there are times when you have to be extremely careful with how you use the remote training collar, because it is a very powerful tool. It doesn't take a hell of a lot of effort on your part to push that button. But what I do with these, with Zeke, I would let him break these birds and I'd bring them back. And what I did was, it made me think of this when you were asking me about, how was your hunting season? What I ended up doing is I went to a shooting preserve, and a guy had a bunch of bobwhite quail, and I bought some bobwhite quail, and I put them one at a time in our Dogtra. We make a remote release trap. It looks like a little trampoline launcher, and I put the quail one at a time in there. That way the birds weren't going to run away. They weren't going to fly away. And I would put them in one at a time. I'd work them in. And if he did not point the birds, I just flipped them out and let him chase for a bit and brought him back. And over the course of time, and 16 to 20 quail later, over the course of a couple sessions, I had him starting to point and hold birds. He was starting to figure the game out.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is, you don't want to lean on these dogs too early with the remote training collar. You want them to progress naturally, but you also, I tell this to people all the time, when you're using a remote training collar, this is where dog training art meets science, Scott. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Because you've got the science and technology of the remote training collar, but it's like many things in life, there's an art to doing this. And unfortunately, many people only get to experience a handful of dogs in their lifetime and learn to be a dog trainer, or they send it off for training, which is a good thing as well. But if you're doing it all on your own, they're afraid of the remote training collar because they don't understand it. They don't know how to work it, and they end up using it in the wrong situations. So for those people that are trying to do it yourself, so to speak, there's a lot of good information out there by a lot of good trainers. It's online. Most of it's on YouTube. And you want to start this dog appropriately, but you don't. There's some do's and don'ts that you got to remember as well. And one of those don'ts is you don't want to apply too much pressure on a dog to steady them up when they're creeping or breaking point.
Yeah.
Because you could get a dog that starts blinking birds.
Yeah, very good point, and I've read that, and I've practiced that for years and years and years. But you also talk about using some of the other components, some of the other capabilities of that collar. You called it pager and vibration.
Yes.
I love that one, and I do use it in the very same way. The question for pointing breed owners really becomes, when do we touch that button for the vibration in the course of a dog that he's learned how to point a bird.
Mm-hmm.
He's learned that he's never going to get any positive reinforcement if he busts that bird.
Mm-hmm.
How do we interrupt the temptation from a timing standpoint, and do we accompany it with a command?
So when that dog gets his first experience with birds out in the field, I like to see the dog encounter these birds in a training situation, not just out hunting.
Oh,
okay?
Yeah.
And so then in that situation, I'd have the birds in a launcher. I may have head tucked them and have them, in the grass.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm probably bringing that dog in on a rope or a leash, so that I can show the dog what I want. Dog's got the training collar on. I've initiated, or he's experienced the pager vibration for the steadying.
Yeah.
Back in the yard.
Yeah, because it's an obedience command.
It is. And the other thing is if you just, some people think, well, the vibration isn't very aversive to the dog. In other words, it's not, they're not going to be frightened by it. Yeah. They're wrong, because I've seen a lot of dogs that have just about jumped out of their skin the first time you use the pager vibration.
Oh yeah.
On the dog. So just because it's not static electric stimulation doesn't mean that it's not going to be, could be an averse reaction to this type of stimulation. And it's just a pager vibration on the dog. It can startle them. It's a sensation. So we want to incorporate that. We want to start that back in the yard, mm-hmm. so that when we do take them out in the field and we're doing some practice work, some training on some game farm birds, some planted birds, we can steady them up that way.
Yeah.
So those are the things you want to do long before, unfortunately, people seem to think that, well, you do this yard training with the dog that we're talking about, and then all at once what we do is we just take them and jump right into the field. And I know for a fact, I told you this story the last time I was on your podcast. I said, I was doing a dog demonstration for local Pheasants Forever chapter Youth Day, and we probably had about 100 kids there.
Wow.
And what I was explaining was just what we're talking about right now, how the dog needs to go through the yard training and then field training. That's all practice before we take them out and put them in a real live hunting scenario. And what I said to the youngsters there, I said, how many of you play some kind of youth baseball, softball, or basketball? And almost every one of them raised their hand. And I said, and how many of you started out in your first baseball game without ever going to practice? And none of them did. They all raised their hand and were like, well, Mr. Fischer, we practiced before we ever played any games. And what I think I told you on your last podcast I was on was that, if you didn't take little Joey and practice baseball with him, if you just threw him right in a game and lo and behold, he hit the ball off the tee or got a hit somehow, and you had never practiced with him, he wouldn't know to run to first base, second base, third base, or the parking lot. So,
and speaking of YouTube, I've seen that on YouTube.
Yeah. So So I relate to try to relate the training of the dog to similar, environment or training that you would do with a child in a youth sports.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, and unfortunately, a lot of individuals, when they get a dog, they don't realize all the different steps and transitions, Scott, that you should go to before we ever take that dog out in the field. And you touched on something earlier, about 5 minutes ago, about, the reward process. And the reward process is very important. And you have to be very structured and disciplined when you got a pointer and you go out in the field and he flash points his first bird and he doesn't hold it and he goes in and tries to take it out and it gets up. And now you've got to decide, Scott Linden, are you shooting that bird or are you letting it go? And many meat hunters, they're popping that bird because it's just out of instinct. But what you've done is you've just rewarded the dog for not pointing his bird.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I want to turn that into the ultimate question. At every point in this dog's education, we want to reinforce good behavior, compliance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that term, but it actually works. Young dog coming back to you, that's an easy one. Verbal praise, we love them up, maybe we scratch them behind the ear, or we give them a food treat or something like that. We get into these more sophisticated training situations. We got a collar on him, and he holds the bird for however long we want him to hold it, wing, shot, or fall, depending on where we are and our philosophy, political leanings and all of that. The dog does it right, whatever it was. I agree that a dead bird on the ground is probably the best reward for most bird dogs most of the time. That's why they're called bird dogs. Are there other things that you can do at that point? The bird flies, we shoot it, it drops. Dog's steady. You're going to release that dog for retrieve. Or what else are you going to do to positively reinforce a dog at that point in their career?
Personally, I think, a good verbal and even, manual praising the dog are appropriate. When I'm out in the field and doing this type of work, I'm not going to have a treat in my pocket and treat train them.
Yeah.
And I treat trained a lot of puppies over the years. I do more of it now than I've ever done, Scott. But when I get to the field, those positive reinforcements are going to be from the handler. That's me. And it's going to be in the form of manual, good boy, stroking them, scratch behind the ears. And then just, I'm not one of these. If you ever watch some of the dog training shows that are out there, some of these individuals go to this real squeaky voice, good dog, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And that's, if you want to do that, that's fine. That's not me. I'm going to just use my regular tone of voice and praise the dog. And the bird, you touched on the bird is a good natural positive reinforcement. But let's not forget a real important part of that is that the dog should have been conditioned. They had some kind of conditioned retrieve to bumpers with wings, frozen bird, dead bird, fresh killed bird, long before he ever gets that bird shot for him over in the field, because you've got a chance with some of these dogs. The first fresh killed bird they encounter, they might pick it up and bring it back to you. My experience has been they're probably going to run over there and chew on it for a while, throw it in the air a little bit, roll on it, dig a hole and bury it, or eat it. So there are, it's as you can tell, I'm getting to the point where let's not forget that we got the dog as a conservation tool. Not only should it find the birds for us, but it should find that dead bird or the crippled bird for us. So really to incorporate the retrieving part into it, regardless of the breed, pointing breed, flushing breed, that dog to me should go out and find that knockdown bird and be good at bringing it back to you and delivering it to you. Now, some people don't train their dogs to deliver to hand. All of mine deliver to hand. That's a big part of it. Having a finished bird delivered in my hand and a crippled bird that isn't dropped at my feet and it takes off running again.
Exactly.
So that's the bird retrieving of the bird can be a positive reinforcement, but again, it shouldn't happen. The first time they experience a live bird or a fresh shot bird should not be out on a hunting trip.
Oh, amen to that. In fact, just last night we were going back to square two. We didn't have to go all the way back to square one, but we're working on that very thing in the yard again with Flick. He's 8 years old now, but I'm still working on these things because there's a point in time on every hunt or every season or every day when they just wanted to hit. What did a fan years ago said? Zealous death chomp. Which is another great name for a band, by the way. But that he will bring back a bird, and if that bird is just a little bit alive, or just he thinks it's alive, he'll deliver a zealous death chomp. And maybe one is okay. I attribute it to Germanness, but we want to minimize that, and one way to do it is to go back and kind of retrain some of this retrieving stuff, which really is an obedience command as well. And so let's talk for a moment about that and using the e-collar. Again, we've got these cautions about how we use an electronic training collar when a dog is around birds, let alone when they're going out to pick up a bird. But how would you use a collar? And maybe we're going back to the training table, and maybe we're going back to bumpers or something else. But walk us through the way the e-collar works in that whole situation.
Well, for the retriever people, we use the training collar in almost every aspect of the training.
Sure.
And almost every retriever that you send off to a trainer or are going to attempt to run in any hunt test or field trial, you're going to have to go through what, excuse me, Scott, what's called a forced fetch or forced retrieve.
Mm-hmm.
And, that varies. Most of us have used the ear pinch method over the years. Uncomfortable feeling on the dog's ear. Dog opens his mouth. It learns that he turns the pressure off on the ear by putting the buck or the bumper in the dog's mouth. And what we've done over the course of time with the remote training collar is what we call collar fetch. And so once the dog is force fetched, we use light stimulation to motivate the dog to go and pick up the bumper and bring it to us. And that's the first step of it. So that's done back in the yard training as well. And we take that and we take it to the field. But the first place we start is in our yard training. We're in a controlled environment on a rope or a leash. And so that eventually when we get them out in the field, and if the dog doesn't pick the bird up, because of all the excitement of the hunt, we have the ability with light stimulation of the collars to say fetch and get them to walk over, run over, pick it back up and bring it to us. So the collar in the retrieving part of it, we call it collar fetch is what most of us refer to it as. And so it's just being able to, and so some people might say, well, what's the purpose of that? Why use the training collar? The training collar now gives me the ability to reinforce that command at a distance without having, when I've taken him all the way through the yard training and he's off the rope or the leash and he's been collar fetched and now he leaves that lay 50 yards away from me and I can see that he's just leaving it lay or chewing on it. I can command fetch and light stimulation, tap, tap, tap. And with if it's done properly, the dog realizes what he's doing and remembers back from when we did the yard training that the out with the fetch command and the light stimulation is to pick that bird up and get it back into Pete. So it gives you all the remote training collar. I call it an invisible leash. So we don't have the rope and the leash dragging all around us while we're out in the field. It gives us that ability to reinforce commands at a distance without having all this rope, a ski rope dragging behind the dog.
By the way, I love my ski ropes. They're the best. They're the best check cords I've ever owned because they're really lightweight, and you can get them in bright colors. But you just hit on something that I've hammered on before, and I'm going to touch on it because I think you would agree. Jeff Funky, the guy I get my wire hairs from, great guy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Jeff was at Kansas City, by the way. Well, I had a 30-second conversation with him. Luckily, he was on the podcast a few weeks back. Anyway, Jeff pointed out most self-respecting bird dogs will happily run out toward a dead bird that's on the ground. If they see it drop, or if they know they have confidence because you train them right, they'll all be glad to run out and try and find the bird. The rubber meets the road when you want them to bring it back to you, and which is in large part simply a recall, if you think about it. So if you're training recall correctly with your collar and your check cord, and then you progress from bumpers to frozen birds to fresh dead birds, it's not near the quantum leap it would be if you just expected a dog to go out and, out of loyalty and kindness to you, bring it back because they know that's exactly what they should do. They need to be taught recall with dead birds. And the collars used the same way in retrieval.
And even breeds that we refer to as retrievers, such as the Labrador Retriever, which I've been involved with and own many of them, and over my much of my career, most retrievers, well-bred retrievers, do not necessarily bring everything back to you. A ball, a bumper. Hopefully, we have dogs that love to chase and go after something that's shot or thrown for them or falls out of the sky. But the retrieve part comes from what you just described, Scott, is that we have to teach the dog to bring it back to us. If you left them in that natural state, a dingo, a wild dog, if you left them in that state, they would go and get that bird and do one of two things. I probably told you this before. I've been on your podcast enough now. I'm regurgitating a lot of this stuff. That dingo would go and eat that bird, Scott, or go dig a hole and bury it and eat it later. So our job as a trainer is to teach the dog that we want the bird brought back to us. And so we want to start with a dog that wants to chase and go after it and hopefully pick it up. But most dogs, unless you train them, do not bring things back to you naturally. It's just, you get lucky every once in a while, but and we'll have a dog that'll retrieve naturally. But I've seen enough dogs in my day that, I people that call their dogs, he's a good natural retriever. Well, most of them are a good natural chaser. The retrieve part, bringing it back to the owner, comes from training.
Well, we could go on, and we will do this again because I learn something every time I talk with you, Pete Fischer from Dogtra. Hey, everybody, there's always new stuff and things to learn at the Dogtra site, by the way. Is it Dogtra.com? Am I right on that, Pete?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love some of the products. Still use the T&B Dual all the time. Those are all useful things you can learn at Dogtra.com. You can also keep listening here because Pete will be back. I can promise you that. Leave us with a quick summary of the biggest dumb things we do with electronic collars. You've alluded to a few, but are there other things, cautions that we should just make sure we never do when that collar is on our dog?
One of the things that I see on a regular basis, Scott, is that people start using it, even individuals that have used training collars over their lives, professionals, that do not realize that every time you push that button, you get a different reaction or no reaction from the dog. Uh-huh. And many times there's so many factors come into play, Scott, as to how a dog reacts or doesn't react to the static stimulation, or even a person if you test it on yourself.
Sure.
With dogs, when you are working them, and this is a topic for a whole nother show, I've learned a lot about something in the dog system called cortisol. And as the dog is in excitement mode, under pressure, you name it, it releases cortisol in the dog's system. Consequently, when that dog has got a lot of cortisol flowing in its system, a level of stimulation on the remote training collar that got you a reaction 30 seconds earlier gets you no reaction 30 seconds later because of the environment and the cortisol in the dog's system.
Yeah.
And what I see, Scott, is, and that would be a great another topic to have me on, and we'll talk more in depth about, is that the first thing the person thinks is there's something wrong with the unit. It's not working right. And I wish I had a quarter for every time I answered these questions. And what I tell them is take the unit off and test it on yourself.
Yeah.
So that is one of the things that I've seen in the last couple of years that I really see on a regular basis is people not understanding, what I said earlier. This is where dog training meets art and science.
Yeah.
And so that's probably one of the biggest things I believe is if you think the unit isn't working right, take it off the dog and test it on yourself.
And I will just add one more. That is absolutely true. In fact, I was talking with somebody not the day before yesterday about, my 6-year-old dog, I only need to turn it up to 2. My 1.5-year dog, I can go to 11 if there is such a thing, and he would still not respond. I would only add, and I want your advice on this, I think a lot of us don't put the collar on the right way. Take me to school, short lesson, and then I'm cutting you loose. Putting that collar on.
It's got to be fairly tight.
Yeah.
If you got a long-coated dog, hair works as an insulator.
Mm-hmm.
The contact points, both of them have to be touching the dog's skin. It works through the dog's nerve endings, and then which trigger the muscles. That's the way it works. But most of us are going to put it on fairly high on the dog's neck and off to one side under the ear, not over the windpipe. And that unit should be on the dog tight enough, Scott, so that when you take him out and let him run for a couple minutes and bring him back to you, if that unit's hanging over his windpipe, you didn't have it on tight enough.
And there is a fine line there. I will check every time. I'll put it on, just like you said. And by the way, thank you. Only Dogtra's website reminds you to put it off to the side. And then I will try and stick my finger under each of the two. What do we call those? Contacts?
Contact points. Yep.
Yeah. And if I can work at it and get them under, I think that's about right. So thank you for that. And thank you for all of these insights. I said we would go to school with you on this, and you really did teach us some valuable lessons. That's Pete Fischer. He's with the Dogtra company, pro trainer. Got a lot of blue ribbons in that kennel over there, and now you know why. Pete, always fun to talk with you, whether it's here or in a booth somewhere. Thanks so much for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Always fun to be on, and let me know when you want me to come back.
Oh, believe me, I will. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And the rest of you, don't go away, because I'm going to offer up something I learned at the range again. Yeah, I keep relearning this stuff over and over. This will be in the Fix It segment. It'll be along just a few moments from now. First, from Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, had a great talk with my friend Dave Fiedler over there, who can line up just about any Browning shotgun you were looking for. They got a massive inventory, and if they don't have it in stock, they can probably get it for you. So if you are fixated on Browning, your place to go is midvalleyclays.com. Get the phone number, take a look at the Pro Shop inventory and the gun room inventory, both of them. Whether it's a sub gauge or your old standby 12 gauge, if you're looking for a Browning shotgun, go to midvalleyclays.com. And going strong at 8 years, Flick is nutrified. I just made up that word, by the way. But that's all thanks to Pro Plan Sport dog food from Purina. Yeah, the science behind the nutrition is awesome. I've spoken with all the folks over there. I've been through the factory. I've learned all the rationale behind the way they formulate performance dog food for my dog and your dogs to come. Nutrient dense, 30% protein, 20% fat is the exact right ratio to fuel your dog's energy requirements throughout the season and throughout the day. And then if you are hunting multiple days in a row, one of the more important aspects is increased endurance. You get that from concentrated nutrition that optimizes oxygen metabolism. In humans, we call it VO2 max. If you're a weightlifter, you know what I'm talking about. Our dogs need the same thing. Learn more about the nutrition and the formulations available for your performance dog at ProPlansport.com. Safety first, especially in this Fix-It segment, but if you can get away with it, and you might ask, but there are times when you're at the range, and it could be the trap range, the skeet range, it could even be the sporting clays range, 5-stand as well. If you want to be a better shooter, you need to turn that controlled situation into a more field-like situation. I've never met a pheasant that will hold still, let alone a dog that will hold still, while you trundle up, get your earplugs in, loosen up, set your feet correctly, and then know the bird's going to fly from hard right to hard left at that trajectory. No, it doesn't happen. So why not simulate a more realistic field situation at the range? As I said, safety first, ask permission, but even if it's a couple steps from the back of the shooting box to the front of the shooting box as the target's being released, that gives you a chance to work more realistically on getting your foot position correct and getting your gun into the ready position in time to draw a bead on that flying target, follow it with your eyes, move, mount, bang. Hey, no limits, no closed season, and just a little bit better simulation of your field experience. Hope it works for you. It works for me. And the Fix It segment is brought to you by TrulockChokes.com. Well, that's another reason I'm shooting better, especially in the sub-gauges. You know, they've got sub-gauge guns for just about every single shotgun you can think of. Even if you have a brand that's a little less common or a little bit new to the marketplace, there's probably an equivalent TruLock choke. Doubt me? Go to the website, TrulockChokes.com. Check the choke interchange list. Woo, that's a mouthful. It's right there on the website. Just page down to your gun, your gauge, and match it to their list of choices. Sign up for their email notifications. You'll get sales information and find out about all the other promotions, lots of added value stuff. It's all right there at TrulockChokes.com. Well, thanks, Pete Fischer. You are truly a professor of e-collar tech and philosophy. And as you said, an artist and a scholar. Appreciate your help, and I hope everybody else does as well. Thank you if you commented at the social platforms. Always something fun to talk about there, and I'm getting all sorts of great advice, as are so many others. If you leave a rating or a review, I'd sure appreciate it. Wherever you get your podcast, please leave a rating. And thank you to the companies that make this all possible. RuffLand Dog Kennels, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, your Browning dealer, TruLock Choke Tubes, Pointer Shotguns, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, and HiViz Shooting Systems. Hey, there's some new material at findbirdhuntingspots.com, so if you want more on any of these topics, I think you'll find something there as well. Appreciate your listening. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation Podcast.